Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of the Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Ken Szydlow. I'm being joined by one of my oldest friends, my first person who trusted me with TV and media in the Lehigh Valley. So it's so nice to have you here on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. And I'm trusting you for this too.
It's
This is my first podcast.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. I'm good. Well, we have wine here,
oh,
so take
always,
a sip of wine. That's good. Cheers.
Wine is always good.
Yep, with our little glasses, unscripted.
I know, these are awesome.
You like that?
I definitely want one.
You get to take one home for sure. I want to start at the very beginning. So you are the Chief Marketing Officer at St. Luke's University Health Network,
yes.
Which is how we met, but we'll get back to that. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? Where were you raised? And what was your family's sort of structure like?
If you go way back, actually I was born in Canada, and I ended up in Canada, being born in Canada, because my parents were Holocaust survivors, and they were unable to get to the United States. They were war refugees, and after the war, both sides of the family ended up in Belgium. And eventually, my father's family came to Canada, my mother's to the United States. She actually came through Ellis Island,
Amazing.
And they met at a wedding of mutual friends from Belgium. My mom married my father, moved to Canada, and I was born. And then my family structure is I have a younger sister. Mm-hmm. She's 2 years younger. And eventually my father, because of work, moved us to Brooklyn, and from Brooklyn to New Jersey, and eventually to Allentown.
Isn't that incredible? And so what country in Europe were your family from?
Well, my parents grew up in Belgium.
They grew up in Belgium?
Grew up in Belgium, specifically Antwerp.
Okay. And what an amazing history. I mean, not that many people can say that they are the children of Holocaust survivors.
They tell stories, and there are not many other relatives left in the family to tell those stories, so my parents continue to do that. My father is very much into doing research, genealogy research, and a lot of history these days. So that is how he spends a lot of his retirement time, is trying to trace roots and find other relatives. And every once in a while we encounter someone new who's still alive and is in an offshoot of the family.
So important. Do you think as a kid that you understood the magnitude of what that meant? Was it something that you understood, or is it something you learned over time?
No, I think throughout my entire childhood, my parents talked about it. There are some people I think who don't talk about their experiences. My parents did, and I think they were very passionate about making sure that, as kids, my sister and I understood what it was like to be Jewish, not just in their generation, but generations before. And then when I was in college, I pursued other courses on Jewish studies and Jewish history. I'm a history buff as well, so I think there used to be a television show on PBS, World at War, and that we used to watch that as kids. I mean, it's very graphic, but it's also a really great narrative of what happened during World War II, and they have an episode on the Holocaust, and you don't forget that when you're watching that as a kid, and those memories and those images have stayed with me.
I was very fortunate in the education I received in grammar school and high school to have a lot of significant Jewish literature and Holocaust studies in my course of study. And I don't know that that's totally the norm, but I think it's such a significant part of our history, and it's such an important part. And I've had the pleasure of meeting your parents, who are pretty cool people. So that's neat. That's a really unique history. Now, what about your sister? Are you close with your sister? Is she local? Do you see her?
My sister lives in Philadelphia.
Not too far.
Right. And so we see each other on holidays. We have kids of similar age. So yeah, we do.
Now, if your mother's American or emigrated here and your father's Canadian, do you have dual citizenship?
So that's a good question. My father, my father eventually got his U.S. citizenship. But at the time I was born, I had both, and I've often wondered, I've never really pursued it, but I wonder if I do have Canadian citizenship still. I don't really know. I have to find that out.
I mean, it's unusual
because my grandmother I have a 107-year-old grandmother who still lives.
107?
Yes, she's 107.
That is good genes. Wow.
And I have a step-uncle who lives in Toronto. My grandmother's in Montreal.
And what about Belgian citizenship.
No. I don't think. I think at the time, and it still may be the case. I could be wrong, so don't quote me. But I think you actually, if you emigrate to Belgium, I think you actually have to have like 99 years of history before you can be considered.
But boy, pretty multicultural.
Oh yeah.
A lot you could claim. All right, so tell me a little bit about you're in Brooklyn until you're how old? I mean, when are you?
No,
in
I was
Allentown?
really young.
Really
I was in
little, so
Allentown. Yeah, and I consider myself a local.
Okay.
A returning local, because I had moved away for a while, and I came back about 11 years ago. But I grew up. I consider myself a Lehigh Valley native. I'm a Salisbury High School graduate.
Now, when you were a kid, what were you into? What were some of your hobbies? Did you play any sports? What did you like to do?
I was a voracious reader. I was literally that kid who at night would still hide under the covers with a flashlight, staying up and reading books, primarily science fiction and mystery. My mom got me a book, I remember, called The Star Beast by Robert Heinlein, and it changed my whole world because I was really into watching horror movies and TV, and she wanted me to read more. So she got me this book that had this monster on the cover. It was a great science fiction novel, and I was hooked ever since. And then I started reading.
But I love that about your mother, because I'm thinking like a lot of mothers might say, don't read that, you're going to have nightmares, you'll be scared.
She
but she
figured
knew
that
you
was,
loved that,
yeah,
and she just said, I'm going to support it.
Yeah, so I think by the time I graduated high school, my room probably had just on science fiction alone like 300 volumes of books. So I did a lot of reading. I played some tennis. I enjoyed it. But I was never a great player. But I did enjoy playing tennis, and I haven't played in a while. Swimming. I've always liked going swimming.
But you're an outdoors guy.
I did, but that didn't come for years later.
Okay, that wasn't like a kid thing.
No.
Your dad wasn't going outdoors, and okay.
Our trips went to the mall. We had family vacations and lots of trips to the mall. I had a lot of hobbies that I just pursued more on my own. I was photographer. I've always been a photographer since I think 7. I've been passionate about photography, and I used to print my own film starting when I was 13. So photography, reading, those are my big
And what was it
activities.
about photography that you were drawn to? I mean, it's a pretty young age to find something you feel passionate about. Can you identify what that was, or?
I think I've always liked storytelling. I mean, that's been a constant theme in my life.
Thank God. That's changed my life, because you like
right.
storytelling.
And for growing up, I always envisioned myself as this photojournalist, because I also like to read and write. So photography, writing. I wanted to make horror movies. I wanted to make documentaries. So all the things I'm starting to do now, those are all things as a kid, I was interested in. I always like the odd stories. I mean, my wife calls me Cliff Clavin because, I have this capacity for memorizing and remembering useless trivia. That was
That's
something
good. That's entertaining at a dinner party.
Right, it is. I've used that to much success. Yes.
That's great.
When I was a kid, I had a friend, Mike Leith, who actually works at St. Luke's, and we were on the Scholastic Scrimmage team together. And together, I think at one point we had the entire original Trivial Pursuit card deck memorized, because we were determined.
You're kidding.
We would, no.
Oh my gosh, Ken, that's incredible.
So that's because we were on Scholastic Scrimmage.
Can you believe it? And that show
Still
still
goes
around.
today.
Still around. What was that experience like?
Two things. It was an enjoyable experience. We had a really good team. We took it seriously. We had a great coach. Dolly Yanoko was our high school art teacher, and she took up Scholastic Scrimmage. So she was encouraging us to actually get together and study trivia, as well as art, which has also helped me quite a bit throughout my career. But I still remember being on those shows. I was on for 2 years. We had a couple of episodes that we did well. But 2 things came out of it. My glasses, because just like these lights, my glasses during the time kept sliding down. I kept pushing my finger to get my glasses up. So my parents said, no, it's time to get contact lenses. So I got contact lenses.
So you got contacts from Scholastic Scrimmage.
Yes, and I was the first kid I knew, because I was never into stereos and music, but I was the first kid I knew who got a VCR.
Really?
Because we had to tape the show.
That's great. I love it. Those are good. Hey, listen.
Yeah.
So big life-changing things came out of school. You memorized Trivial Pursuit.
Yes.
You got contacts, and you got a VCR.
Correct.
I love it. Right. So after you graduate high school, what's next for you? Where'd you go to college?
I went to Cornell University. I was a government major, and
why Cornell? When you looked at schools, was there a rhyme or reason behind it, or?
I looked at probably 4 schools. I looked at...
Remember when you used to only have to look at 4 or
Right.
5 colleges?
It was
Now you
just
gotta
a
look at
different
20?
experience. I ended up, Cornell was a good school. I went to look at it. It was a beautiful campus. At the time, Carl Sagan was the professor, and Cosmos had come out. So I ended up living a couple houses from him. My fraternity was
Really?
2 houses away from Carl Sagan. But no, it was, I just looked at a couple of different schools, and a different process. I almost went to Penn State. That would have, if I hadn't gotten into Cornell, I would have gone to Penn State. I had a roommate pretty much
Ready to go.
Ready to go.
But now Cornell ends up being kind of a big defining place in your life, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I actually, I met my wife at Cornell, but I didn't
Shout
date
out
her
to
at that
Lisa.
time.
Shout out.
Shout out to Lisa.
She's the best.
The funny story there,
You met her, but you didn't date her.
I didn't. I met her. I did not date her. We actually were in same classes, and we worked on projects together.
Did you like her?
So I did like her. In fact, we were at parties together. We never dated. But years later, literally years later, at a Cornell reunion, I was driving back to Ithaca with 2 friends of mine, Jacques and Scott. They were fraternity brothers, and we were going to meet some other friends. And Jacques said, if you could go back in time, he asked all of us, if you could go back in time, and there was a girl at school that you hadn't dated that you would, who would it be? So we each named somebody. And I mentioned Lisa. And later that night, literally, in a college bar called Connections, I walk in, and there's Lisa with her sorority sisters, because they were coming back for a reunion. And they were sitting at a table, and there was an empty chair right in front of her. So I walked up, sat down, we chatted, and then I asked her out for the next night.
And that was it?
And that was it. So we
love
dated
that.
long distance for a long time, but we've been married going on 21 years.
Oh, it's such a great story. I love that. And then you and Lisa ended up going into business together, correct? Is that at some point, am I jumping too far ahead in the story? What is Lisa, let's go back.
Okay.
What are you doing at this point? When you graduate college, what are you doing and what is she doing?
When I graduated college, I was looking for a postgraduate fellowship. So I had gone directly from undergrad to grad school.
And you studied what? What was your major?
I was business plus focusing on healthcare and marketing.
Okay.
And I had been lucky because I had started some businesses, photography businesses, when I was an undergrad. So with that experience and some work experience, I've been working in a hospital since I was 15. I ended up going to grad school. And after grad school, I was looking for a postgraduate fellowship. Long story short, I ended up coming back to the Lehigh Valley to work for a company called Health East, which at the time was a parent company of Lehigh Valley Hospital.
Okay,
Right.
interesting.
And I ended up being the second person that they ever hired from a fellowship into a full-time job. So I'm working at Lehigh Valley, and I was at the Cornell reunion, reconnected with Lisa, to find out that she was finishing grad school for a master's in hospital and health administration. So she was actually pursuing a similar path. But she took a path taking her to the insurance side, the PPO, HMO business. I stayed with healthcare, the hospital side.
And she's not here, right? She's not in the Lehigh Valley.
No.
at this time.
I was
Okay.
I used to travel to meet her at Penn State, the main
Okay.
campus, and then after that, she ended up getting a job in North Carolina. So it was always long distance.
Wow.
And then eventually, she ended up working in Manhattan. I was working in New Jersey. I had left the Lehigh Valley by that time, and we decided we were going to live together because it was more affordable, and kept
you
us
love
closer.
each other.
And it kept us closer together, exactly. So we did that for 2 years before I asked her to marry me.
That's great.
And then
But then you built you guys worked together in some capacity.
we did.
Am I right to say that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was still hadn't happened just yet.
you're working at your jobs.
Well, we ended up getting married, and then I took a new job within 4 weeks. We got married, we got a new house, and started a new job in Poughkeepsie, New York, which was a phenomenal place to work and live. Despite the Poughkeepsie, we actually lived in a town called Pleasant Valley, which really
That's
was
pleasant.
really pleasant, and in the Mid-Hudson, New York State, the home of the Hudson Art School,
Yeah.
School of Arts. It was beautiful, and worked there for a number of years, and things had also begun to change. But we started a business. We started two businesses. One was we thought we'd do something very different. It was just when the housing was doing terrific and people were buying houses right and left. The market, this is before everything tanked. Everything was going well. We thought we'd be smart and we'd start this corporate stained glass business.
Corporate stained
It was
glass.
a franchise where you would mass produce stained glass type materials,
Okay.
but on tempered glass. So it was
Okay.
virtually unbreakable, but it looked and felt like stained glass.
Stained glass,
And you could do it in residences and rehab projects and commercial real estate projects. We had some clients, but the market changed. Everybody stopped buying houses and real estate market. It was a good experience, but it wasn't a good
Gonna work,
experience.
yeah.
And then the other businesses we had started and took off were we ended up doing outside consulting work for a number of physician practices and hospitals. At one time, we had about 25 major clients throughout the country where we recruited physicians. And, well, that's going back a while. We recruited physicians to practices that were looking to grow, and then we helped them market those practices and the new physicians, as well as help them with their accounts receivable. So we had a couple other people in the business. It was actually called Szydlow and Foster at the time.
Okay.
We did that for about 5-6 years. And then one day I got a call from Lisa. I was actually out in Kansas, and she said there's a recruiter who's looking to see if you're interested in going to back to the Lehigh Valley, a hospital in the
Wow.
Lehigh Valley. And I had actually been working with, earlier in my career, I had been working with Lehigh Valley Hospital for about 5-6 years. And I had left. I went to work at Penn, but I thought, well, maybe I had still been connected to Lehigh Valley. In fact, we had done some work for them, some physician recruiting. So I thought, wow, that's interesting. I assumed it was them, but it wasn't. It was for St. Luke's. And it was like, wow. So I did some research, saw St. Luke's had blossomed into this bigger system. And I came in, found out that they had been searching for somebody to become the vice president for marketing and public relations for a couple of years. And it was a very quick courtship. It just was a good match, and I ended up taking a job and coming back.
That's great. And at that time, and your parents were still here? They were
Yes.
in this area? So
Yes.
that was probably nice to, and now to talk about your family a little bit,
Yes.
you've now got 2 of your 3 kids or all 3 kids when you came to the Lehigh Valley?
I had all 3 kids.
All 3 kids. So
yes.
you've got 3 kids, you moved back to your
Right.
parents, so it's a good fit,
So it was a good fit, and it didn't put us further away from Lisa's parents.
which is nice.
Right. It was actually halfway between both families.
Oh, that's great. That is perfect. And what at this point, when you take this job at St. Luke's, what do you think had been the thing you had learned that was most helpful in coming into this job? Because you'd been in a variety of positions, you'd been entrepreneurial, you're pretty artistic. What were you able to learn and take from those experiences that you brought to this job?
I think it goes back to that concept of storytelling. I mean, I had really started out more on the business development and planning side. My prior roles had been focused more on, it was marketing, but a lot also mergers and acquisitions of new hospitals, new practices. And along the way, I saw that really came to see the importance of marketing in telling a business's story. I saw the need to and use marketing as a way to make sure that the businesses I represent are heard, they're seen, they're remembered, and they're preferred. And that to do that, you really have to take more of an aggressive stance, a creative stance. You have to surround yourself with talented people who come at it from different ways so that you can tell a story. And then if it's done right, I think it's magical.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds corny, but I tend to do. Think of it this way: if I had a pen and paper, I would draw a symbol, right? And in that symbol, the reason I think it's magical, I could get into your head, and you would know which company I'm talking about. You would know the products and services without me saying a word, right?
Right.
So I'm going to say 2 words instead of drawing it.
Okay.
Okay. Yellow M.
I'm supposed to know what that is?
Yes. If I had drawn a picture of a yellow M.
Oh, McDonald's.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
Right?
You know what's so funny? Do you know that my brain reversed? I was thinking Metro for New York.
Wow.
But okay, I
You're
got you.
ruining my perfect
I know,
example.
I'm sorry, Ken. I'm not as quick as the general public.
So bear with me for a
But I
second.
got you.
So McDonald's,
you've drawn
right?
this thing,
So
yeah.
right now, as you're saying that,
Yep. I had to say it,
you
though,
probably,
interestingly.
well,
Okay.
Well, you probably now have visions
The whole
of fries
thing.
in your head,
Yeah.
or 2 all beef patties,
Right.
special
Yep.
sauce, lettuce, cheese,
Yep.
pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, right? That's all in your
How
head.
can everyone say that? My
Right?
husband can too.
Right. Or better yet, if I had a pen, I would draw on a piece of paper a single swoosh.
Yeah, Nike.
Nike. So now so the fact that you can probably see in your head shoes and
Michael Jordan
athletic wear,
jumping,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, that's great marketing, but it doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
People.
It's purposeful.
It's
People think it is
purposeful.
because it's in their
Right.
head on accident.
Right, but it's not.
Right.
And I think over the course of, particularly with my time in Poughkeepsie, I learned those lessons and the importance of how to craft those stories, make stories really resonate. And when I came to St. Luke's, the one thing I wanted to know, and everybody seemed to be reassuring me that if I wanted to shout from the mountaintop the stories, they would do that. It was just.
And it's interesting because I think in your time you've very much made the star synonymous with St. Luke's. So you talk about a symbol that means something, and while we could talk about Moravian Star, the Star of Bethlehem, really that star in many ways. I know it's a slightly different star, but it is quite synonymous with St. Luke's.
I think if you were to put that star out there, and I think there have been surveys and there's been research that shows more people would first say St. Luke's these days than anything else. But I also look at making the stars from a different angle. To me, our physicians are still our stars, but it's the focus has always been on that physician-patient relationship. It's not really the technology. We talk about technology, but the story is always about real physicians, real patients coming together and improving people's lives.
Yeah.
And everything else sort of is extra to that story and enhances that story. And I think as long as we remember that, we'll continue to feed and strengthen our brand, so that if I were to draw the St. Luke's name with the star, they're not necessarily going to say, oh, that's a neighboring church, right? They're going to think, no, that's St. Luke's, the hospital system. That's the more personal care provider. They'll have the image of hopefully really powerful, caring, sympathetic, empathetic nurses and doctors who bring, health care to them.
I love it. And I love, for those of you who are listening and not watching, although you can watch it on YouTube,
Yes.
It's nice to see you light up about it. You can tell that you have such a passion for storytelling. And of course, you've been so instrumental in the Peak TV and our trajectory and involvement in this community.
Right?
It is. Well, we
Absolutely.
try. We certainly try. Tell me a little bit about your family. You've got 3 amazing kids.
Yes.
Let me know about that. What's it like being a dad, and what's your involvement in your kids' life? Like, what do you?
Well, my
think
kids
your
are
role to be?
At the end of the day, that's as much as I may be passionate about work. I'm more passionate about my kids, and for me, everything is so I can spend more time with my family. I mean, I truly enjoy playing with my wife and my kids. And you mentioned before, we are very much outdoor focused. While I've never been a big organized sports fan, I've always enjoyed fishing and camping, hiking, and biking, though I did not get into that until I was really into my 20s. And it was, in many ways, it was Lisa who got me into that. She grew up camping and biking, and she was the one with the canoe.
I love it.
I just realized how much I loved doing that afterwards.
And then, of course, you've been really involved with Boy Scouts. Your son Ben was an Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. Nathan was in Cub Scouts for a while, but for me, one of the best pleasures was going hiking, but carrying my kids on their backpack, right? I mean, we went hiking all over. I took them fishing, and we continue to do that today. So every year I try to take at least one kid with me on the Lehigh River sojourn that Wildlands Conservancy.
Which is such a great outing and an amazing way to experience the Lehigh Valley.
Right.
Where we both were
Right.
very, very lucky to work with Wildlands.
Absolutely. And I would give a shout out to them because I think they're really trying to protect the outdoors and
connect people. Connect
correct.
people with their
with
area
nature
in a different
as well,
way.
right? And you get an opportunity to look at this area with a different set of eyes.
And your son Ben is at Pitt, we should mention.
He's at Pitt. He's a freshman. He's studying finance and real estate. He's enjoying it.
And your son Nathan?
Nathan.
He probably took more in your photography.
He's
really...
yeah. I mean, I was always into the arts, but sort of behind the camera, right? Nathan has just amazingly transformed from this kid who loves computers, and he's, I keep thinking the helicopters are going to circle my house because he's hacking into something. But he's gone from having a following online who follow his gaming adventures to a person who's now blossomed into this actor on stage.
And he's incredible. He's really
I'm
talented.
so proud of him. I don't know where he's. Lisa's definitely been more outgoing than me, so I think he takes that from her. But he is really good on stage, and he has a play coming up. He's in our town. He's at Charter Arts, but he also performs with the Pennsylvania Youth Theater.
Yeah, it's really neat. I mean, just having known your family now for 7 or 8 years, it's been cool to see that change in him and finding your passion. And then, of course, you have your baby girl.
Yeah, who's
Emma.
now she's
It's like the fastest kid in the Lehigh Valley, or something like
well,
that.
I think we'll see. She's turned out to be an incredible athlete. Emma succeeds at every. She is just passionate, aggressive, super quiet. If you listen to what she says amazing things, but she's very quiet. But she's passionate when it comes to her studies. She's passionate about her being an athlete. And yeah, she is right now has a very good speed for cross country and for track. So we'll see where she goes with that. I do wish she'd be a little less intense about some things. I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll hear a noise, and it's Emma. She's studying. So.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
so it'll be interesting to see where she goes. I think
there are worse things.
She's already decided she wants to be an engineer and then go to med school. So all these STEM programs are working.
Good for her. That's great.
For her.
And I want to mention, because Lisa, I'm fortunate to call a friend, and it's just an amazing person. She's so warm
absolutely.
and so kind and so fun. She's also wildly talented in a number of ways, one of which I'd like to share because it's pretty great. I hope we have a photo to go with this, but the cake decorating.
Yes, Lisa makes amazing cakes.
I mean, they're not just taste good cakes. They are like these beautiful, amazing cakes.
Yes.
Where did that start?
I've always said, Lisa has picked up, I think, all the attributes of Martha Stewart prior to going to jail. And in fact, I all the time I dated her, I used to joke that she's like Martha Stewart.
That's neat.
In her skill sets.
She's like a real Renaissance woman.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your team at St. Luke's. The network continues to grow.
Yes. You've
got this really nice core team who continue to adapt and change and go with the network. What does the next iteration look like? What does it look like in 2020 and beyond?
I am really fortunate. I have phenomenal staff. What I think people don't realize, about 90% of all the marketing that we do comes out of our department. We do work with agencies on occasion to help us move projects along, but I'm really lucky to have internal writers, graphic designers, really, really strong staff. Where I think we need to challenge ourselves and we need to be more focused is look at where marketing and information systems intersect. Because in the healthcare world, and healthcare has always been a little bit behind retail in terms of marketing, it's catching up. But right now we have access to information and data that will make our marketing much stronger going forward. The best example, I know, we care for people, hundreds of thousands of people in the Lehigh Valley, but we have the ability to actually look at those populations and say, okay, you're a cardiac patient, but you, based on your health or history, may have, AFib. Do you know what AFib is? And we can actually proactively reach out to patients and say, do you have these signs and symptoms? Are you suffering from these things? Do you know someone who is? And provide educational materials so that they may better, I don't want to say self-diagnose, but become informed.
It's fascinating where marketing is going.
Yes.
So if you think about when you are on Facebook or Instagram,
yes,
and you look something up, or I would go so far as to say have a conversation near your phone, the next thing you know, it's advertised to you. But when you look at that in terms of healthcare, in a lot of ways, what an incredible asset, because often we neglect our own checkups or the things we're supposed to look into, or we're caring for parents and kids, so we forget about ourselves. What a unique opportunity in healthcare, really.
Yeah, I think the whole industry has a potential to shift. I mean, traditionally we fix things, right? We provide care services, we deliver the services, and then we're using technology to help fix and repair. I think we have the opportunity now to use technology to earlier detect, and not just diagnostically. I mean, I think you're going to see a whole growth in wearable devices that are going to monitor in less obtrusive ways. They're going to feed that information back to your doctor or your hospital, your health provider, and then we're going to work to proactively engage patients and help them, either get healthy or stay healthy, or try to keep adverse conditions at bay. I still think we're a long way off from population health.
Yeah.
I think we're a long way off. I'm not convinced all the talk and design. I mean, I think it's a great concept, and hopefully technology will help make us do it, but I'm a little bit more cynical in that regard, because at the end of the day, it's still people having and wanting and needing to change. And
that's hard to control.
Well, it is hard to control. I mean, think about it as an individual or anyone who's listening, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, the largest health issue in the United States, or even in the Lehigh Valley, is obesity. So
right.
That's why I like to say, get out and get out.
Yeah, eat less, exercise more.
Right.
We know the formula.
Exercise is the best form of medicine.
People have to choose to do it.
Right. So technology may make that easier, but
well, in that regard, though, you and the team have come up with a lot of innovative ways to give people the opportunity to connect. So
yes.
You've got some cool programs like
yes.
Tail on the Trail.
Yes, I'm very proud of that. We teamed up with the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor about 6 years ago. We came up with this program that encourages couch potatoes to get off the couch and get mobile. And we've had a lot of grassroots marketing and success. We have about 6,000 people who have logged, over 3.5 million miles.
I was going to say a couple million, but you're telling me it's 3.5 million. Wow, that's a lot.
So that's a success. And we develop those programs under
walk
this
with
rubric.
a doc.
Walk
you
with
get
a
to go out
doc.
and walk with your doctor.
Yeah. We have about 30 to 50 people a month who participate in that. We're working on this Fit for Life concept to tie all these programs together. And I think that's our role, is to help generate those programs. But people need to be also a little bit more self-motivated and self-inspired to participate.
Right. Well, when you think about the other projects that you have helped facilitate, so of course, certainly our show, The Peak TV, that you and I collaborate on for the last 7 years.
Yes.
Can you believe it's been 7 years? Hundreds of stories, and you work on Talk with Your Doctor with WFMZ. We work on a new show called Health Now. You've done several documentaries. What is important to you about these outside programs that you want to be a part of and support, and why do you think they're important to our area and to St. Luke's?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's all about making the world a better place to live, and start with your local community. And everything that we're doing, that's the reason I like collaborating with you. It's not just telling the St. Luke story. It's telling the stories of all those like-minded community organizations that want to make the community better. And that's why they're on the show, and the other shows that we do. And how do we make that positive, engaging content people want to watch, learn something, and actually, again, take a look at the Lehigh Valley, which maybe they have grown up in all their lives, with fresh eyes, and hopefully glean something better out of it. And at the end of the day, St. Luke's is part and parcel of the community. We're the second largest employer. We are
and you've been here a long time.
Been here a long time, about 150 years. More people have started their lives at St. Luke's. They've been born at St. Luke's. So, as the better the community does, St. Luke's does, and as better as St. Luke's does, the community does. They're intimately tied together.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up your newest hobby, because we profiled this on the show, and you have started beekeeping.
I have.
How did you get into beekeeping? I'm so scared of bees, Ken.
Oh, no.
Why are we going to get me over this?
Well, there's nothing to be scared about. I mean, bees will leave you alone if you leave them alone, and I don't know. I just it really. I over the number of years I heard about the decline in bee population, and what will that do to our community. And the more I looked into it, it's true that about 70% of the world's edible plants are dependent upon a pollinator to help them reproduce, and bees are key to that. So without bees, we're screwed. And so I started my my project at a local winery. Thank you, Andy and Chris Warner at Black River Farms, for letting me set up hives.
Yeah,
And
which is kind of a cool model because it is a winery.
Yes.
It's nestled right in the Saucon Valley area, really basically right off of a highway.
Yes.
So they're growing grapes, right?
Yeah.
But they've got this cool sustainable model. And I know in talking to Andy, they felt like having bees there
Yes.
makes sense in that model.
which it's even more interesting because bees themselves, grapes don't necessarily need bees to
Right.
reproduce, but Andy and Chris have all these other plants and flowers that add to the ambiance of the winery, so the bees help that. And they have this beautiful couple acres of sunflowers, so the bees
It's
thrive.
pretty incredible.
It is.
But
And,
they also said the bees go out really far,
yes.
right? And then come back. And
bees travel about a 3-mile radius from the hive, which is one of the reasons they're also on the decline, because people are using pesticides and things, and people are getting rid of all the flowers or weeds in their lawn, which bees thrive on. As a marketer, I feel a little bit guilty about that, because if you think about it, it was probably marketing that's helped to cause the decline.
Well, you weren't directly part
No,
of the
no,
problem.
but it is. I was reading about this the other day, and it just as an odd tangent, but I found it interesting. People in the United States started investing heavily into lawns, green lawns,
Sure.
getting rid of weeds,
Sure.
but really only after World War II, because they were inspired by companies like Scott's, right, grass and turf, that said you could have, golf was becoming big after World War
Yeah.
II, so their marketing campaign was you could, in effect, have a golf course in your backyard. So they got all these people fired up to having these level green fields in their front and back.
Well, it ebbs and flows. I think the bee message is getting out there, and people are sort of saying to put plants and flowering plants back in your yard
Right.
that are sustainable
Exactly.
for that
Right.
reason.
Right.
So
Plant
So
more.
it comes,
Yeah, it comes back.
But I love that you want to be part of the solution. I think that's neat. So I can't let you go without asking you a few questions. These
Okay.
are just going to be random, rapid
Okay.
fire questions.
All right.
What's the best place you've ever traveled to?
I really like Cape Cod. I just have always enjoyed going back to that beach. It's a great family place, and you can have adventures there. You can go sailing, you can go fishing, you can just relax. I don't know, and followed by Hilton Head.
And where is a place that you've never been that you'd like to go to? Bucket list.
Mongolia. I want to ride a
Mongolia.
camel on the Gobi Desert, and I hope to achieve that within 2 years.
Okay, I like it.
Because we have really good friends who.
I was like, how'd you come up with that?
Lisa and I have really good friends who live in Mongolia. We knew them in New York. They were college students. They got married in our backyard, and we've stayed in touch with them. And so when Nathan graduates, we want to go to
Do that.
Mongolia.
I love it. What is the best lesson you learned from your parents? And they could be separate if you have a mom and a dad, one.
No, I think that family is really important. Family is really important.
If you could eat one last meal, what would it be?
Definitely fried chicken with probably a hot fudge sundae.
I love it. That's good. That's a good meal. I would join you in that one.
Yeah.
Good. Ken, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here.
My pleasure.
It's just an absolute pleasure to work with you
You
and
too.
St. Luke's and
You
the
too.
team, and we're so happy you're a part of our podcast.
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay, great having
my
you.
first podcast.
You survived. You did
All
great.
right. All right. Thank you.
Great, Ken Szydlow. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.